For meteorological data, we need to use a different part of the form, and that's this bottom part that says continuous monitoring meteorological data. And unfortunately, I don't have a graph set up for that. You really need to look at the graph of your meteorological data. You can use the reports and charts form of the toolbox, and we're going to go over that form more during our next webinar session. For now, we're just going to look at our meteorological data in spreadsheet format. So you need to make selections in the order specified here. So first we'll select our site ID. So that's S46. And for meteorological data, that's IMET. And the sampling year is 2013. And like I said, for each meteorological parameter, we have to run the validation separately. So I have 4 meteorological parameters in my data that I measured. So for each of those meteorological parameters, I need to do the final data validation process separately. So the first one is ambient temperature. So I need to select that. And I'm just going to use the view only qualified data. At this point, I don't want to look at all of the data, but if I did, I could click on that button. But for now, I'm just going to do view only qualified data. And I have 4 records, and you can see that the ambient temperature is way too high, obviously an error. And you'll also see that I have 2 flags for these points. And with your meteorological data, sometimes you're going to be seeing flags that don't pertain to that particular parameter. So we have OWS and OAT. So let's just look at our final data validation list here and see what those mean. So OWS is out of range wind speed, and OAT is out of range ambient temperature. So we see 2 of the flags, even though we're only looking at ambient temperature right now. So these are obviously errors, so we need to invalidate those data. When you want to use the AQS null code, you just click in the AQS null code column of that record, and then you click on the drop down to select what invalidation code you want to use. So I'm going to say this with a machine malfunction again. And again, you might have something more specific written in your logbook that you want to use. And then I'm going to use that keyboard shortcut again to go ahead and copy that invalidation code into the next record. And to do that, I use the Control apostrophe on my keyboard. And again, that changes these from the bold to this grayed out, so we know that they're invalidated. And just a point here, although you can have multiple toolbox flags, you can only have one AQS null code. So there's only one selection you can make for each of these. So I am done with my ambient temperature for now, and I can close this window. And again, remember, this only pertains to qualified data. So this, if you haven't qualified data, you can't use this button here. You have to view all the data, because otherwise you're not going to be able to see anything. So this really assumes that you have gone through the initial flagging steps. Otherwise, you'd have to use this button here just to invalidate your data. So let's move on to precipitation is the next thing I measure. I'm going to click on View Only Qualified Data. And instead of seeing data, I get a message box that says there are not any flagged data within this range. There's nothing to invalidate based on my flagged data. I didn't flag anything, so I don't have anything to invalidate. So I click OK. And now I need to move on to the next one, which is relative humidity. And I view only qualified data again. And again, I didn't flag any of my relative humidity data, so I don't have anything to invalidate using this method. If you want to confirm to make sure that all of the relative humidity values were okay, you can always click on this View All Data and just look at the data. So say that you think that you might have missed some flagging and there was really something in here that might be suspect, you can just always use this button here to look at all of the data. And again, you're going to see flags here that don't pertain to relative humidity, because these are the flags for the wind speed and the ambient temperature. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything, so I'm just checking it again. Everything looks good, so I can close that and move on to our last parameter. And that last parameter was wind speed. So I'm going to view the qualified data, and I know I have these very negative values that are obviously errors, so I'm going to invalidate those as well. So I'm going to select machine malfunction again, and then use the keyboard shortcut of Control ' to copy that AQS null code from the previous record. And now I have invalidated the wind speeds that were very out of range, -999s, which were likely errors. So I'm going to close that. And that was the 4 parameters that I collected, and that completes the process for my meteorological data. So I make a note in my database logbook that I completed the final data validation process for my meteorological data between 8/8 and 8/22/2013, and I write down that I invalidated 4 ambient temperature records that were very high and 4 wind speed records that were very low.